Earth's defenders launched their final assault. The battlefield, a desolate wasteland of scorched soil and broken cities, echoed with the sound of gunfire, artillery, and the inhuman roars of alien warlords. Elite soldiers in advanced combat suits fought with all their might, but the alien invaders were beyond anything humanity had prepared for. Their energy shields deflected bullets and rockets like toys, while their plasma weapons melted through tanks and armor effortlessly. Human soldiers fell in waves, their bodies piling up in the ruins of what was once civilization. Overhead, alien dropships hovered ominously, reinforcing their ground forces. The humans' best efforts, strategies, and weapons had failed. Every skirmish, every tactical decision, every technological advantage Earth had been proud of was meaningless in the face of the alien warlords' overwhelming superiority. The soldiers, once confident and determined, were now fighting purely for survival, but even that seemed like a hopeless cause. Desperation hung thick in the air. The alien warlord Zalvok stood at the front lines, towering over his troops, watching the slaughter unfold with a cruel grin. He held a translator device that allowed his voice to boom across the battlefield, his words dripping with disdain. "Is this the best Earth can offer? Is this your final defense?" He laughed, a guttural sound that echoed across the battlefield. "Pathetic. Primitive." The broadcast was global, visible on every screen, every radio frequency. The world watched as Earth's military crumbled under Zalvok's command, their efforts mocked by an enemy that seemed unstoppable. Humanity's leaders could do nothing but witness the fall of their defenders and the end of their civilization. The alien forces advanced, obliterating everything in their path, indifferent to the humans' feeble attempts to hold the line. In an underground bunker, the highest-ranking military officials and government leaders gathered around a war table, their faces pale with defeat. Whispers of surrender began to spread, but one voice cut through the hopeless murmur. "We have one last option," General McAllister said, his eyes dark but resolute. The room fell silent. Every gaze turned to him as he brought up a classified file on the holographic screen. Project Lazarus. "We've explored every conventional path, and they've failed. It's time we consider the unconventional," McAllister continued. "We have resources from our darkest history. We've kept them locked away for a reason, but now they may be the key to our survival." Some in the room shifted uncomfortably, recognizing the implications. "You mean monsters?" one official whispered. McAllister nodded. "Leatherface." Gasps followed, along with hushed conversations. Leatherface, the infamous killer from decades ago, had been a figure of horror, a man who struck fear into the hearts of millions. Yet, his reputation for brutality and relentless violence was exactly what the military needed now. Humanity's defenders had tried fighting with honor, with tactics, with logic. None of it had worked. A scientist stood up. "We've made progress on reconditioning him. Through our work, we've managed to adjust his instincts, his impulses. He'll no longer target humans." "And you're certain of this?" McAllister asked, his voice low and dangerous. "Because if we release him, there's no turning back." The scientist hesitated. "We believe he can be controlled. Enough to turn his rage towards the invaders." There was a long, heavy pause. Then McAllister nodded. "Do it." The decision was made. Leatherface was reborn in the heart of a high-tech laboratory buried deep beneath the earth. The hum of machinery surrounded him as scientists worked to recondition his mind. His body, once grotesque and scarred, had been enhanced with cutting-edge technology, cybernetic implants, armor plating, and neuro-reinforcements. His massive frame now housed a weaponized version of his infamous brutality, designed to tear through the alien forces that plagued the planet. The chainsaw, too, had been upgraded, sharper, stronger, and more resilient, capable of cutting through alien armor like it was paper. But there was something primal, something uncontrollable that still lurked within Leatherface. Despite the scientist's best efforts, they couldn't erase the savage instincts he had developed over his lifetime. They could only attempt to redirect them. Screens flashed in front of him, showing alien warlords, their sneers and mocking expressions designed to trigger his violent tendencies. Leatherface growled low in his throat, fingers twitching around the handle of his chainsaw. His breathing was heavy, like an animal ready to pounce. In the control room, scientists monitored his brain activity. "His aggression levels are rising," one murmured, watching as Leatherface's neural activity spiked with every image of the invaders. "He's responding well. We've successfully reprogrammed his violent tendencies towards the alien threat." But there was unease in the room. They had given him enhancements, improved his durability, and strengthened his body, but they had only managed to harness his rage, not fully control it. A general overseeing the project expressed the concern on everyone's mind. "What happens if he turns on us?" The lead scientist didn't have an answer. They all knew this plan was a gamble, one born out of sheer desperation. But with the world on the verge of extinction, they had little choice. Leatherface was their last weapon, a force of nature they hoped would obliterate the alien threat before it destroyed them all. Meanwhile, in the barracks, rumors of Leatherface's resurrection spread among the soldiers. Nervous whispers echoed through the ranks as they prepared for the next battle. Some spoke in awe of the legend, a killer so feared that his name alone struck terror into the hearts of his victims. Others were openly horrified, unsure how such a monstrous figure could ever be trusted to fight alongside them. But fear was a small price to pay. They had already seen the aliens decimate everything in their path. Conventional weapons had failed. Their friends, comrades, and loved ones had been wiped out by an enemy who saw them as little more than an annoyance. If this monstrous relic from humanity's past was the only chance they had left, they would take it, no matter the risks. As the day of deployment neared, Leatherface was outfitted with combat gear. His chainsaw gleamed with deadly intent, reinforced with alien alloys to withstand energy-based attacks. His armor was thick, designed to take heavy hits while allowing him the mobility needed for close-quarter combat. He stood still as the final preparations were made, a hulking figure of pure violence. His eyes, hidden beneath the mask, burned with a focused intensity. There was no emotion, just raw, unfiltered hatred for anything in his path. The scientists handed over the reins to the military, and with a final nod of approval from McAllister, Leatherface was cleared for battle. The soldiers who would fight alongside him gave him a wide berth, their unease palpable. He was no ally, no comrade. He was a weapon, one as dangerous as the enemy they were about to face. But as the transport prepared to take them to the battlefield, there was a glimmer of hope buried deep beneath the fear. They had witnessed every other plan fail. Maybe this, the most unorthodox of strategies, would be the one that worked. Leatherface hit the battlefield with a force unlike anything the alien warlords had ever seen. The ground shook as his boots slammed down, the rumble of his chainsaw roaring to life sending shockwaves through the ranks of alien soldiers. The warlords, watching from the safety of their hovercrafts, chuckled. They had been expecting something formidable, perhaps a new human superweapon. Instead, what they saw was a brutish figure wielding an outdated, barbaric tool. A chainsaw. It was laughable to them. But the laughter didn't last. Leatherface charged forward, his chainsaw slicing through the first wave of alien soldiers like they were made of paper. Their energy shields were useless against the relentless onslaught. He cut through armor, flesh, and bone with terrifying efficiency, the sound of the chainsaw mingling with the screams of the aliens. Panic spread through the ranks as their advanced weaponry proved ineffective against him. Plasma shouts grazed his armor, but he barely flinched, driven by an unstoppable fury. The aliens were fast, their combat styles refined, but they had never faced anything like this. They were used to precision, technology, and clean, calculated kills. Leatherface was chaos incarnate. He didn't fight with strategy or finesse, he fought with raw, savage power. His chainsaw, upgraded with alien materials, tore through their laser blades like they were toys. Limbs flew, blood sprayed, and the alien front lines crumbled. What shocked them most wasn't just the brutality, it was the sheer relentlessness. Leatherface didn't stop. He didn't hesitate. He didn't pause to catch his breath. He was a whirlwind of destruction, moving from one alien to the next, tearing through them without mercy. His eyes, burning with a primal hatred, never wavered. He wasn't a soldier. He was a force of nature. And the aliens, with all their technology, didn't know how to handle that. The alien commanders, watching from above, quickly realized their mistake. Zalvok, their leader, sneered. "It's a beast, not a warrior. Kill it." They sent their elite troops, skilled fighters armed with laser swords and shields capable of withstanding the toughest human weapons. But Leatherface didn't care. He wasn't human, not anymore. He was something far more terrifying. He charged straight at them, swinging his chainsaw with brutal precision. The elite soldiers fell just as quickly as the others. Their shields were no match for the savage strength behind each of Leatherface's blows. Sparks flew as the chainsaw ground through their defenses, cutting through their armor and flesh in one brutal stroke. Human soldiers, watching from a distance, couldn't believe their eyes. This was the monster they had feared, the killer they had been warned about. And yet, here he was, doing what they hadn't been able to, destroying the invaders. Leatherface was turning the tide. For the first time since the invasion began, the alien forces were retreating. The battlefield was a chaotic mess of destruction. Alien bodies littered the ground, their blood soaking into the earth. Leatherface stood amidst the carnage, his chainsaw dripping with the remains of his enemies. He didn't stop. He didn't acknowledge the human soldiers who stood in awe around him. He simply revved the chainsaw again, looking for more targets. Zalvok, watching from his vantage point, was furious. This creature, this primitive thing, was humiliating his forces. He activated his command ship's weapons, preparing to annihilate everything in the area, but the ground forces had already been decimated. The humans had seen their opening and were now launching a full-scale counterattack. Inspired by Leatherface's savagery, they pushed forward with renewed vigor, taking down alien ships and ground troops. The Warlords, once arrogant and dismissive, were now in full retreat. For the first time, they had been outmatched, not by superior strategy or technology, but by something they couldn't comprehend. Something they couldn't control. And Leatherface, covered in alien blood and surrounded by wreckage, stood at the center of it all, chainsaw roaring, ready for whatever came next. As the battle reached its climax, Leatherface found himself standing face to face with Zalvok, the alien warlord responsible for the devastation of Earth's defenders. Zalvok descended from his command ship, his towering figure draped in armor shimmering with alien technology, energy crackling from the edges of his plasma blade. His eyes were filled with cold contempt as he sized up the human monster before him. This was the creature that had dismantled his forces. It was time to end the anomaly. Leatherface, chainsaw in hand, stared back, his expression unreadable beneath his mask. He didn't care who Zalvok was or what he represented. He only knew one thing: this alien stood between him and his next kill. The low, guttural growl from his chest was the only warning before he lunged forward, chainsaw roaring to life. Zalvok's plasma blade clashed with the spinning teeth of Leatherface's chainsaw in a blinding shower of sparks. The sheer force of their collision sent shockwaves across the battlefield, but neither opponent yielded. Zalvok, moving with calculated precision, swung his blade with lethal intent, each strike a perfect combination of alien technique and superior technology. But Leatherface wasn't fighting with skill, he was fighting with fury. Every swing of his chainsaw was fueled by unrelenting rage, driven by a primal instinct to destroy. The two combatants traded blows in a vicious dance of violence, each trying to overpower the other. Zalvok's movements were fast and controlled, his plasma blades slicing through the air with deadly accuracy. But Leatherface was relentless, his chainsaw tearing through every defense the alien warlord put up. The battle was not about finesse, it was about endurance. And Leatherface had more than enough of that. The plasma blade grazed Leatherface's armor, scorching it but not slowing him down. Zalvok, growing frustrated, activated his suit's energy shields, hoping to wear down the human's assault. But the shield only delayed the inevitable. Leatherface slammed into Zalvok, forcing him back with the sheer weight of his attack. The chainsaw, enhanced with alien materials, began to crack the energy shield, grinding against it until sparks flew and the shield faltered. Zavok realized too late that this was no ordinary opponent. Leatherface was something beyond human, a force of destruction that couldn't be stopped by technology or strategy. Panic flickered in the Warlord's eyes as his shield gave way, the teeth of Leatherface's chainsaw biting into his armor. With a final, desperate swing, Zavok tried to end it, but Leatherface was faster, driving his chainsaw through the Warlord's chest with a sickening roar. Alien blood sprayed across the battlefield as Zavok crumpled to the ground, his body twitching in its final moments. Leatherface stood over him, chainsaw revving, watching as the life drained from the alien's eyes. There was no triumph in his gaze, no sense of victory. He had done what he was designed to do, destroy. With Zavok's death, the alien forces lost their coordination. The surviving warlords, leaderless and disoriented, ordered a full retreat. Human forces, emboldened by the victory, pressed the attack, driving the invaders back into the atmosphere. The battle was over. Earth had won. But for Leatherface, there was no celebration. The battlefield, now quiet and still, held no meaning for him. He didn't care about the war, the victory, or the future of humanity. He was a weapon, one that had no place in the world beyond this fight. The soldiers, who had watched in awe as he single-handedly turned the tide, kept their distance. There was respect, but also fear. He wasn't one of them. He never would be. As the alien ships retreated into the skies, Leatherface turned his back on the battlefield. Without a word, he disappeared into the wilderness, his chainsaw silent at last. The war was over, but his story wasn't. Somewhere, out in the ruins of a broken world, the monster still roamed, neither hero nor villain. Just a creature forged by violence, seeking his next purpose.